She was just a homeless janitor with nothing left but courage. But when she whispered 4 words to a billionaire, everything changed. Wait until you see how. Stay tuned, because you are about to watch a beautiful story and find out what happened. Hello, family. Welcome to Tales Haven. Kindly subscribe to my YouTube channel for more beautiful stories. Thank you as you do so. Sit back, relax as we dive into the story. The city was loud outside, but Harrison Tech was quiet. Most lights were off. Only a few office lamps still glowed on the 48th floor. The cleaning crew called it the ghost floor at night. Big glass, big desks, and no people. Michael Harrison sat alone in the corner office. He wore a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up. A cold cup of coffee sat by his elbow. A whiteboard covered the wall in front of him. Lines, arrows, and numbers crowded the board like a storm. He rubbed his eyes and checked his phone again. 2 missed calls from the board chair. 3 new articles about the company's crashing stock. A short headline glared at him. Harrison Tech project fails again. Investors lose faith. He put the phone face down. Think, he told himself. There has to be a way. The new product, an energy module his team had named PulseCore, should have worked. On paper it was clean, powerful, and safe. In tests, it kept failing. Sensors overheated. Timing slipped. Nobody could find the real reason why. The best engineers in the country had tried. They argued. They stayed late. Nothing changed. Michael stood and walked to the whiteboard. He pointed to one line of symbols. This is where it breaks, he said under his breath. But why? He felt a weight in his chest. It was not only the money. It was pride. He had built Harrison Tech from a small lab into a giant. People called him brilliant. People said he always won. Tonight, those words felt heavy and far away. Down the hallway, a squeak of wheels broke the silence. Grace Miller pushed a cleaning cart out of the elevator. A gray sweater hid the thinness of her arms. She wore old sneakers and carried a mop that had seen too many rooms. Lemon cleaner filled the air. Grace nodded to the security camera, then to the night guard, Hector, who sat reading at the desk near the elevators. Evening, Grace, Hector said, without looking up. Evening, she answered softly. She checked her list. 48th floor, executive offices. She knew the rule her supervisor repeated every night. Stay fast, stay quiet, don't talk to anyone. You're here to clean, not to be seen. Breaking the rule meant losing the job. Losing the job meant losing the tiny locker where she kept her few things and the night shift pay that bought her bus rides and breakfast at the shelter. She opened the supply closet, filled her bucket, and started with the empty boardroom. She worked slowly and carefully, tables first, then windows, then floors. She was good at it. She took pride in lines that were straight and glass that shone. But cleaning was not who she had planned to be. Once, not long ago, she had been a student with a backpack full of notebooks. She studied mechanical engineering at a community college across the river. She loved the way numbers fit together. She loved problems that had answers. Then her mother got sick, her father lost his job, and bills piled up like winter snow. She took time off just for 1 semester. That semester became a year. After her parents passed, the apartment went next. She slept in a shelter, then on a friend's couch, and finally in the women's wing at New Hope. She kept one habit from school. When the world felt too big, she solved small puzzles in her mind. She still noticed patterns even on the bus or in a hallway. She still believed solutions were hiding in plain sight. Grace wiped a fingerprint from the glass door marked CEO, Michael Harrison. The light inside was on. She heard a voice and froze. Everything I built is falling apart, the voice said. She glanced through the gap. Michael stood with his hands on the whiteboard. He looked like a man trying to hold up a wall by himself. Grace told herself to move on. Don't look. Don't listen. Just clean and go. She pushed the cart past the door, but her eyes caught a slanted line on the board. 2 arrows pointed to a small box with the word delay written above it. Someone had circled it and drawn a question mark. Her heart did a small jump. The arrows were pointing the wrong way. She stopped. No. Keep moving. She gripped the handle of the mop until her knuckles turned white. The rule was clear. Don't talk to anyone. She took 2 steps and stopped again. The wrong arrows wouldn't leave her mind. She could feel the old classroom in her memory, the worn desk, the warm voice of her favorite professor. Always check direction. A great idea can fail if one arrow points the wrong way. Michael spoke again, louder this time. Why can't I solve this? Grace stood alone in the hallway. The building hummed around her. Quiet lights, quiet air, quiet fear. She thought of the shelter where she would sleep later, shoulder to shoulder with women who avoided each other's eyes. She thought of the line at breakfast, the small carton of milk, the toast. She thought of the way people looked through her in this building, as if she were a shadow on the wall. Her eyes went back to the board. Maybe this was foolish. Maybe she would be fired. But how many chances did life give a person to use the thing they were born to do? She parked the cart by the wall and smoothed her sweater. She took one slow breath, then another. She tapped lightly on the open door. The sound was so soft she almost didn't hear it herself. Michael didn't turn. Grace stepped just inside, keeping close to the frame, like a guest who might be asked to leave at any second. The office smelled of coffee and dry marker ink. A soft rain tapped the windows. Up close, the whiteboard was clear. The box marked delay sat between 2 stages of the system. Both arrows pointed into it. Neither arrow pointed out. That meant information, timing, went in and never left. It was like trying to fill a bucket with no hole at the bottom. Of course the system would jam. Grace's voice was small when it came. Sir? Michael flinched, then straightened. He hadn't realized anyone else was there. He glanced at the door, surprised to see a woman with a mop. I'm sorry, Grace said quickly. I'll be fast. I'm just cleaning. He gave a tired wave that said do whatever you need and turned back to the board. Grace stood still. Her heart knocked hard in her chest. She told herself again to leave. She pictured her supervisor's frown. She pictured the red mark on her time card that meant dismissed. But the wrong arrows were a bell in her head that would not stop ringing. Michael pressed his fingers to his temples. He spoke to the board as if it could answer him. We fixed the heat problem. We fixed the power dip. So what is it? What am I missing? Grace felt the words rise to her lips before she could catch them. They were not loud. They were barely more than breath. But they were clear. I can fix this. The room seemed to hold its breath with her. Michael's hand dropped to his side. He turned slowly, as if he was not sure he had heard right. His eyes met hers for the first time, tired, sharp, confused. Grace stood in the doorway with the mop handle pressed against her palm. She did not look brave. She looked like a woman who had been pushed down many times and had learned to stand up anyway. Michael stared at her. What did you say? Grace swallowed. Her voice shook, but only a little. I think I see the problem. The mop's rubber tip squeaked on the floor. The rain tapped harder on the glass. Somewhere down the hall, the elevator dinged. Inside the office, neither of them moved. And in that still second, before doubt, before laughter, before rules and job titles, 2 very different lives met in the quiet center of the night. The silence, after Grace's words, felt like a held breath. Michael's eyes stayed on her. Not harsh, not kind, just measuring. Then, with a small motion of his hand, he stepped aside from the whiteboard. Show me, he said quietly. Grace's fingers tightened around the mop handle. I don't want to break any rules, she whispered. If you want me to leave, I'll leave. I want you to point, he said, voice even. Start with what you see. Grace set the mop against the wall and walked in, careful, as if the floor might crack under her feet. Up close, the ink lines were darker, the arrows sharper. She raised a hand, but did not touch the board. Here, she said, tapping the air near the box labeled delay. You've got 2 arrows going in and none coming out. That means information enters the delay and never leaves on time. It stacks. It jams. The system keeps waiting for a release that never happens. Michael looked back at the board. His jaw moved, but he said nothing. Grace drew a small shape in the air with her finger. Think of it like a small room with only doors in. People keep walking in, but there's no door out. After a while, The room gets crowded. No one can move. Everything stops. Michael reached to the tray, picked up a dry erase marker, and held it out. Would you mark it? Grace glanced at the marker as if it were something expensive. She took it, careful not to smudge her hands. With light strokes, she drew a clean arrow out of delay and wrote one word under it. Gate. Then she drew a tiny heartbeat line next to the gate. The delay should listen, she said. Not just wait. It needs a simple, ready signal from the next stage. When the next stage is ready, the gate opens and lets the timing out. No more guessing. No more pile-up. Michael folded his arms. We've been locking the delay at 60 milliseconds, he said. Fixed timing. Clean on paper. Grace nodded. Clean on paper. But sensors breathe. Heat changes things. The timing drifts. If you keep a fixed number, it starts right and ends wrong. She wrote adaptive above delay. Let it adjust in a small window. Maybe 48 to 52 milliseconds. Let it look for the ready pulse before it releases. 48 to 52, he repeated, almost to himself. Adaptive delay with a ready pulse. Grace set the marker down in the tray, aligning it neatly. It's simple, she said. Not fancy. But systems fail when we forget the way time actually moves. Michael turned to his desk, woke his laptop, and dragged a simulation window to the center. Lines of graphs filled the screen: temperature, current, jitter. He typed fast, changing 2 values and adding a small conditional block. His reflection flickered in the glass. He leaned close, face tight. Tell me if I'm hearing you, he said without looking up. We stop forcing the delay to hold for 60. We let it watch the next stage. When it sees the ready pulse, it releases. If no pulse arrives by 52, it releases anyway to keep the rhythm. Grace stood beside the board, hands at her sides, and nodded. Yes. That gives it a way out. The rhythm stays steady, but it doesn't choke. He hit run. For a few seconds, nothing changed. Then the jitter line flattened. The temperature curve dipped by a small but real amount. The red error spikes that had punctured the screen every few seconds thinned, then vanished. A green line labeled sync steadied like a long breath. Michael's chair creaked as he sat back. The tiredness in his face didn't leave, but something else slid in. Focus, maybe, or the early light of belief. Again, he said. He reset, ran it 3 more times with slightly different heat and load conditions. Each time, the sync held. Each time, the errors stayed gone. He looked up at her. What's your name? Grace, she said. Grace Miller. He stood. The distance between them felt smaller now. Grace, he said slowly, as if remembering the sound of a word he hadn't used in a while. Thank you for speaking. Grace's shoulders eased a little. You're welcome. He nodded toward the door. Do you have a few minutes more? I do, she said. My floor's not due until the hour. Michael walked to a tall cabinet, pulled out a small testing deck the engineers used at night, and set it on the table. He connected it to his laptop and to a bench power unit. Blue indicator lights blinked awake. This isn't the full rig, he said, but it's close enough to prove the idea. Grace watched him switch on the unit. The room filled with a soft hum. On the screen, a live graph spread from left to right. The line jittered, stumbled, then caught the new timing and leveled. Again, Michael said, and covered the small board with his hand to warm it. The numbers rose. The line held. A smile touched only one corner of his mouth. Not victory. Not yet. But relief, trimmed with respect. He shut the test down, and the room went quiet again. Where did you learn to see that so fast? He asked gently. Grace kept her eyes on the board. I've spent a lot of time noticing small things, she said. When life is loud, small things are the only things that tell the truth. He nodded once, accepting the answer without digging. May I fix the board? She asked. He gestured toward it. Please. She wiped the extra arrows, then redrew the part they had changed in simple, tidy lines. Input, delay, adaptive, gate, ready pulse. Stage 2. She boxed the change and wrote try 48 to 52 milliseconds window in the margin. Her handwriting was neat, the kind professors liked. Michael studied it. This is clear. Grace stepped back to the doorway, suddenly aware of where she stood. I should get back to my cart, she said. I won't tell anyone I was in here. I will, he answered. I'll tell everyone. Her eyes flicked up, worried. He caught the fear and softened his tone. I mean, he said, I'll tell them you helped. You saw what we missed. And I want you in the room when we walk through it. Grace tried to speak and failed. She nodded instead. Can you come back in the morning? He asked. 9 o'clock. I'll get you a visitor badge. You can explain the correction to me and 2 leads. If it holds, we'll run it in the lab by noon. She glanced at the clock on his wall. It was past midnight. The idea of 9 o'clock felt both close and impossible, like a door that might open or might not. I can be here, she said. Michael opened a drawer, took out a sleek, heavy card with his name and number and wrote 9 o'clock, visitor badge at security across the back. He handed it to her. You won't need this tomorrow, he said. But if anyone asks why you're here tonight, show them that. Grace accepted the card with 2 careful fingers. Thank you. He looked at the abandoned coffee on his desk, made a face, and crossed to the small machine on the credenza. Tea or coffee? Tea, please, she said, and then, embarrassed by the sound of hope in her voice, added, only if it's no trouble. It's not, he said, filling a paper cup with hot water and setting a tea bag in it. He handed it to her with both hands, the way people do when they want to give a thing, not pass it. The heat ran into her palms. She stood there a second longer than a person usually stands when given tea. It had been a long time since someone had made anything for her. Thank you, she said again, smaller this time. Michael nodded, then glanced at the whiteboard. I've been staring at that diagram for weeks, he said, almost to himself. Sometimes we're too close to our own work to see it. Grace's mouth curved, a quiet smile that didn't show teeth. Sometimes you just need to turn one arrow. They walked out together. In the hall, the building felt different, less like a glass box, more like a place where something could begin. Hector, the night guard, looked up from his book as they approached. All good up there? He asked, taking in the CEO beside the cleaner. All good, Michael said. Hector, Ms. Miller will be back at 9 as my guest. Please have a visitor badge ready. I'll send a note. Hector straightened. Yes, sir. Grace pushed her cart to the elevator. Michael stopped there, not stepping in, not stepping away. I'm glad you spoke, he said. I'm glad you listened, she answered. The doors slid shut. In the soft mirror of the elevator, Grace saw herself holding a paper cup, a visitor's note tucked under her thumb, a neat rectangle of ink on a whiteboard in her mind. The floors ticked down. 48, 35, 20. 1. Outside, the rain had slowed to a mist. She walked to the bus stop with the tea warming her hands and the thought warming something she had almost forgotten, her sense that she still had a place in the world of problems and answers. On the 2 a.m. bus, city lights streamed past the windows like slow comets. A woman nodded off against the glass. A man in a work jacket counted coins. Grace watched the reflections and quietly rehearsed what she would say at 9. Start with the arrows. Explain the gate. Show the timing window. Keep it simple. At New Hope, the night worker buzzed her in with a drowsy wave. Grace found her narrow bed by the far wall, slid the CEO's card into the pocket of her sweater, and lay on her side. The building's hum was different here, soft, tired, human. She listened to it and to her own steady breath. A thought came, small and bright. Tomorrow, I will draw the arrow again. Not just on a board. In my life. Up on the 48th floor, Michael stood alone for a few minutes more, looking at the corrected diagram. He took a picture of the board and sent it to 2 leads with a short note. Be here at 9. We may have her out. Then he turned off the office light, and the room went dark, except for the city's glow and the faint green LED on the testing deck, still blinking in a calm, even rhythm. Morning would come fast. And with it, the test of the system and of trust. At 8:42 a.m., Grace stood outside the glass doors of Harrison Tech with a small borrowed notebook in her hand. She had washed her sweater in the shelter sink and combed her hair flat. Her stomach fluttered, but her steps were steady. Inside, Hector waved her forward. "Morning, Ms. Miller." He slid a visitor badge across the desk. A printed note sat beside it. 9 o'clock, guest of CEO. "Thank you," Grace said. The elevator rose fast. 10, 27, 48. When the doors opened, the floor felt different in daylight. The city shone beyond the tall windows. A hum of quiet work moved through the hall. Michael was already waiting by the whiteboard. He had changed his shirt and looked awake, but the long week still showed on his face. He greeted her with a simple nod and a glass of water. "Right on time," he said. "Two team leads will join us in a minute." Grace glanced at the board. Their late-night change was still there in neat ink. Input delay, adaptive 48 to 52 milliseconds. Gate, ready pulse. Stage 2. Two people entered. Emily Carter, the systems lead, with a tablet under her arm, and Ryan Brooks, the hardware lead, carrying a small tool case. Both wore the focused look of people called to a fire that might finally be going out. Michael made quick introductions. "Grace Miller found something last night. I want you to hear it from her." Ryan's eyebrows lifted a fraction, but he kept silent. Emily opened a new note on her tablet. Grace took one slow breath. She stepped to the board and spoke clearly. "Your delay block holds timing for a fixed 60 milliseconds, she said. "It looks clean, but heat and load move the timing. After a while, the system waits for a moment that never comes. Everything jams." She pointed to the small box labeled delay. "We added two things. First, the delay adjusts inside a safe window, 48 to 52 milliseconds. Second, it listens for a ready signal from the next stage. When the next stage is ready, the gate opens. If no ready arrives by 52, it releases anyway so the rhythm doesn't choke." Emily's pen stopped. "So the delay no longer guesses," she said. "It confirms." "Yes," Grace said. "It doesn't force time. It reads it." Ryan set his case on the table. "Show me it holds under heat." Michael rolled over a testing deck and connected it to his laptop. "We ran a quick sim last night. It flattened the jitter. Let's do this in front of you." He loaded the old settings first. The graph on the screen wobbled, then spiked red. The small board whined, then dipped. "Baseline," Emily said, marking the time. Michael switched to the adaptive delay and the ready gate. The line jumped, and then settled into a steady, quiet band. The sync line drew a calm path across the screen. Ryan warmed the board with a heat gun, watching the temp climb. 90, 95, 102. The line held. He killed the heat and blew cool air across it. 60, 52. The line held. Emily tapped her tablet. "Try a load step." Michael punched the key. The current rose in a clean ramp. A small ripple brushed the sink, then smoothed. Emily leaned in. "There's a tiny wiggle at the edge of the ready pulse," she said. "See it?" Grace moved closer. The wiggle was there, a fast, nervous tremble as the gate opened. She thought for a beat. "Add a small debounce on the ready," she said. 2 or 3 milliseconds. Enough to ignore noise. Not enough to slow the beat. Michael typed a 3-millisecond filter into the block and ran it again. The wiggle disappeared. Emily smiled, quick and surprised.
"Cleaner," she said.
Ryan shut the deck off and nodded once. "Okay. Lab time. We push it on a full module, or this is just a pretty picture." They all moved down the hall into the integration lab. The room smelled like metal and coffee. Benches lined the walls. A heavy test rack sat in the center with the pulse core module bolted in. A laminated safety checklist hung from a hook. Ryan handed Grace a pair of safety glasses and an ESD wrist strap. "If you're in here, you're on the team," he said. The words were rough, but not unkind. They ran the checklist. Ground straps on.
Cooling fans on.
Emergency stop tested. Fire blanket visible. Data loggers armed. Michael loaded 2 test plans, A for the old delay, B for the adaptive delay and ready gate.
"Plan a first," he said.
Full heat soak, then step load. They ran plan A. At 6 minutes, the sync line drifted. At 8 minutes, spikes. At 10:21, the module tripped, and shut down. Same failure, Emily said. Documented.
Plan B, Michael said.
His voice was calm but tight. He switched to the new code. Fans spun up. Numbers rolled. Minute 1 to 5, stable. Minute 6 to 8, heat soak stable. Minute 9, load step. A small dip, then a clean recovery. Minute 12, second load step, sharper. The ready gate flicked exactly when it should.
No spike.
Minute 15, full mixed profile, heat, load, idle. The band stayed firm. Ryan glanced at the big red e-stop, as if daring it to glow. It stayed dark. Emily looked up from her tablet. No jitter. No runaway. Temp is lower by 2 degrees C at the same output. Michael didn't speak. He watched the graph another full minute, letting the proof sink in. Then he breathed out and almost laughed, not from humor but relief. Okay, he said softly. Okay. The lab door opened. Victor Lane, the CFO, stepped in with Nora James from legal and Lana Pierce from HR. They had the look of people who had been following trouble for days and were now following a rumor of good news. Victor's eyes went to Grace, then to the screen. I heard something's different, he said. Is it working, or are we fooling ourselves between disasters? Ryan didn't look away from the graph. It's working. Victor folded his arms. And we're crediting who? Michael answered before anyone else could. Grace Miller. She saw the fault and the fix last night. She proposed the adaptive window and the ready gate. She suggested the debounce. Victor's mouth thinned. Our janitor?
Our engineer tonight, Michael said.
On paper later. We can label her consultant. Nora from legal stepped forward. We should formalize that now, she said. A one-day paid consulting agreement. It protects her and us. Then we can extend as needed. Lana nodded. I'll print a simple form. Grace, it just says we'll pay you for today's work and treat your ideas as part of the company's project unless we agree otherwise. You should read it. Ask me anything you don't understand. Grace's fingers tightened at her sides.
I can read it, she said.
Michael turned to her. You should read it, he said gently. Take your time. We will not rush you. Victor paced once along the bench. We also need to think about optics. If this gets out, the headline writes itself. Some will clap. Some will ask why we needed a janitor to fix what we pay millions for. Emily looked up, tired but firm. Or they'll ask why we didn't listen sooner, she said. Either way, the hardware doesn't care about optics. It cares about physics. And the physics is clean. Victor held her gaze and then gave a short nod, half respect, half retreat. You'll need a deeper run. Edge cases. Abuses. If this holds, we call the board.
It holds, Ryan said.
But we'll beat it up anyway. They ran more tests. Cold start at 10 degrees Celsius. Hot start at 45 degrees Celsius. Sudden power dips. Quick shut-off, quick restart. Every time, the gate listened, opened, and closed on time. Every time, the sync line stayed steady. While the loggers saved the data, Lana brought a slim folder and a pen. They sat at a side table. She walked Grace through each line in simple words. Grace asked 2 questions, one about payment, one about her name on the records. Lana answered both. Grace signed. So did Michael. You're on payroll for today, Lana said with a small smile. As a consultant. We'll sort next steps after we brief the board. Grace slid the signed copy into her notebook. She looked at the name on the line, Grace Miller, and felt the letters settle like something real. At 12:20 p.m., they gathered in a small conference room. Michael had printed 3 graphs, baseline, adaptive plus ready, and abuse profile. He taped them side by side on the glass wall. Emily highlighted the key points. Ryan listed the test conditions. Grace stood by the whiteboard, ready to redraw the simple block diagram if anyone asked. 2 senior VPs joined by video. Their faces were tight until they saw the lines. Questions came fast. Window size. Why 48 to 52? What if the ready pulse is noisy? Grace answered in plain language and pointed to the new debounce. Emily backed her with numbers. Ryan backed both with the lab logs. By the end of the call, the voices on the screen had softened. Victor checked his watch. Board wants an update at 4 p.m. We'll show them the data and the fix. We'll recommend a limited pilot unit for a partner site. Michael nodded. Grace presents the diagram. Emily presents results. Ryan presents test plan for the pilot. I'll frame the story. Victor hesitated, then gave a practical nod.
Fine. Keep it crisp.
No hero speeches. The room cleared. Michael stayed back with Grace. You did well, he said. I didn't do it alone, she answered. He smiled.
Good.
That's how real work happens. They ate a quick lunch in the cafeteria, soup and half sandwiches. Grace called the shelter from the hallway phone to say she would be late returning. The woman on the desk said, "Good luck today," in a warm voice Grace had not heard from that place before. At 3:45 p.m., they filed into the larger boardroom. The city glittered beyond the glass. The big screen showed the tidal pulse core stability update. Michael stood at the head, steady and calm. He opened the meeting and then stepped aside. Grace moved to the whiteboard. Her hand did not shake. Input, she said, drawing the line. Adaptive delay, 48 to 52 milliseconds.
She drew the small box.
Gate that listens to a ready pulse. She drew the tiny heartbeat next to it. Then stage 2. We added a 3-millisecond filter to ignore noise. She capped the marker and looked up. Emily took over and walked the board through the logs. Ryan followed with the abuse tests and the pilot plan. Questions came. Answers followed. No one raised their voice. At 4:28 p.m., the last graph faded from the screen. The board chair leaned forward. This is the first calm set of lines I've seen in 2 months, she said. We approve the pilot. If the field unit holds for 72 hours, we greenlight the production fix. She paused and looked at Grace. And Ms. Miller, thank you. Grace felt heat rise in her face. You're welcome, she said quietly. When the call ended, the room stayed quiet for a beat. Then Ryan exhaled and finally smiled. Emily closed her tablet with a soft click like a period at the end of a long sentence. Michael turned to Grace. We'll install the pilot at Harbor Grid in the morning, he said. Will you come with us?
Yes, she said.
The word came out easy. He nodded.
Good.
Today you gave us back our rhythm. Tomorrow we see it run in the world. They walked out together. The hallway lights had shifted to evening. The reflection in the glass showed 4 people moving at the same pace. The test in the lab had proved the design. The board had approved the pilot. The story, however, was not finished. There was still the field, the real heat, the real load, the real noise, and the question that hung over all of them now. Would the rhythm hold when the world pushed back? The next morning, the team arrived at Harbor Grid, a local energy station that had agreed to test the updated pulse core module. Outside, trucks rumbled and workers in orange vests carried heavy tools. Inside the control hall, tension hung like static in the air. Everyone knew this was the moment that could decide the future of Harrison Tech. Grace stood near Michael, holding her small notebook. She wore the same sweater, but her posture was straighter. No mop, no cart, just her words, and the work she had done. Ryan and Emily installed the module. Screens flickered alive. The board of directors had joined through a live video call. Even reporters waited outside, ready for news. Michael's voice carried across the room. This test decides if pulse core lives or dies. We run at full load, real time. He looked at Grace and gave a small nod. You ready? Grace's throat felt tight, but she whispered, yes. The technician flipped the switch. The hum began low, like a heartbeat. Numbers filled the screen. Temperature, load, timing, sync. Everyone watched as the minutes passed. At first, it was calm. Then the heat rose. The load climbed. Normally, this was when the system failed. Normally, alarms screamed and red lights flashed. But not this time. The adaptive delay and the ready gate worked exactly as Grace had drawn them. The sync line stayed steady. The module held, strong and clean. At 10 minutes, still stable. At 20, still steady. At 30, the hum smoothed into a rhythm that filled the room like music. Emily exhaled hard, covering her mouth with one hand. Ryan clapped his palms together once and laughed.
It's holding, he said.
It's really holding. Michael turned to the board on the screen. You wanted proof. This is it. The board chair leaned closer to her camera. I've seen enough. Harrison Tech moves forward. Congratulations. But Michael wasn't finished. He stepped back and pulled Grace to the front. Cameras clicked as reporters pushed closer to the glass wall. This, Michael said, pointing at her, is the person who saved Pulscore.
She saw what all of us missed.
She reminded me that brilliance can come from anywhere, from anyone. She taught me a lesson billions of dollars never did: humility. The room was silent for a moment. Then applause broke out, first from the engineers, then the staff, and even the security guards. Grace's eyes filled with tears. She had been invisible for so long. Now people looked at her, not as a janitor, not as someone forgotten, but as a woman who mattered. Michael turned to her. Grace, you're no longer just visiting. You have a place here. If you'll accept, I want you on my team, full-time, as an engineer. With your own desk, your own apartment, and the resources you deserve. Grace's hands shook as she held her notebook to her chest. For a moment, she couldn't speak. Then she whispered, Thank you. Thank you for listening to me. Michael's eyes softened. Thank you for having the courage to speak. Reporters captured the moment as Grace wiped her tears. To them, it was news. To her, it was life being handed back. That night, when she returned to the shelter, she didn't stand in line for a bed. Instead, she walked in smiling, carrying papers that confirmed her new job and keys to a small apartment downtown. The women at the shelter clapped for her and one whispered, You give us hope. Grace sat on her bed one last time and thought of the words she had spoken in a whisper 2 nights before. I can fix this. She realized now it wasn't just about a broken system on a whiteboard. It was about her life, too. And as she stepped into her new apartment the next day, warm, quiet, her own, she knew that sometimes the smallest words, spoken with courage, could rewrite an entire future. That brings us to the end of this video. I hope you find this story worth watching. If you do, kindly subscribe to my YouTube channel for more beautiful stories, like, and share this video to your friends and loved ones. Your support and engagement encourage me to post more videos. Thanks for watching.